And I want to be very clear that I believe, in fact, I know that towards the end, Charlie was fighting for custody of himself. I want to say that. I want to say that plainly. And there are lies that are being told and they need to be slapped down right now.
We begin, as so many have in recent days, with the voice of Candace Owens thundering out over the podcast airwaves, her words not just stirring the pot, but flipping it clear off the stove. There she sits, against a black backdrop, microphone poised, episode title crawling in all caps. Who ordered the hit on Charlie Kirk? She doesn't whisper, doesn't hedge. According to Owens, this was no act of a random, angry youth. No, she insists, Charlie Kirk was silenced because he was softening his public loyalty to Israel. Owens wants us to picture it, Kirk alone with her talking in hushed tones about threats from the Israeli Prime Minister himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, and a hedge fund billionaire, Bill Ackman. We're told the story of a man, haunted, phone lighting up with shadowy warnings, always watching his back. Even as she offers these revelations, Owens is careful to wrap herself in the flag of insider status. She worked under Kirk at Turning Point USA, called him a brother, claims to have seen his anxiety up close, the air around her thick with implications.
To drive you crazy and to just go, okay, I'm just going to accept whenever the authority says something and not prod any further. We can't allow that to happen here. I won't allow that to happen here because this something terrible has traumatized the world, okay? And I feel as though when it comes to this, the media, the government, the talking heads, everyone is confusing us about what actually took place.
It's a move straight from the tabloid playbook. Position yourself as the confidant, then let the rumors hang in the air just long enough for everyone else to choke on them. But Owens isn't just any random podcaster. She was brought into Kirk's world back in 2017, hired specifically to clean up the group's public image. Their friendship was forged in controversy, broken only after Owens' own theories wandered too far down the rabbit holes, for Kirk's taste. Even so, she keeps returning to these supposed private conversations, painting herself as the last true witness to his shifting loyalties. She claims Kirk confessed to her that he'd grown afraid, not of the American left, but of power brokers in Tel Aviv and Manhattan, and maybe, just maybe, the very people once in his corner. Are we supposed to trust her? Her critics would rather eat glass, but she's not really speaking to them. Owens knows her audience, the ones who want a story too twisted for the press office to ever print. Let's not pretend this story didn't already have more plot twists than a streaming drama before Owens even opened her mouth. Charlie Kirk wasn't just a talking head on the internet. He was the builder of a conservative empire. Turning Point USA became the Red Bull of campus activism, slick, loud, caffeinated, and everywhere. And yet, in the months before the shooting, Kirk did something that set everyone on edge. He started welcoming dissent, even from the right. There was Tucker Carlson, famous for his own tangled relationship with foreign entanglements, stepping onto the stage at Kirk's invitation. There was Dave Smith, known for anti-war tirades, going after Israeli policy in front of the same crowd that used to hoot at his every punchline. Owens is all too happy to stitch these moments together, hinting that Kirk was making dangerous new friends, that he had the ear of the ex-president, and that somewhere along the way, the wrong people noticed his hesitancy.
And he was publicly executed. I want to make that clear. Charlie Kirk was publicly executed before the world. And as we are all searching for answers, the ones that are being supplied to us are not making a lot of sense. And some people, I would say, are speaking too much, are speaking on behalf of other people. I don't like it.
It's here that the ground really starts to shift. We have real footage, Carlson at Kirk's funeral, standing at the lectern, comparing the fallen activist to Jesus, betrayed by a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about, what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. That quote alone would have gotten a lesser man canceled into the next dimension. Yet it lands with the force of a brick. Carlson knows what he's doing. He doesn't say Jews, but he doesn't have to. It's the wink and nudge of the century, and suddenly, even the most cautious commentators start to wonder if the conspiracy isn't just online fodder, but a script everyone in the room has already read. Owens, meanwhile, is working every angle. She tells her audience about a mysterious intervention in the Hamptons, where Kirk was supposedly cornered by Ackman and a cadre of pro-Israel figures, an elite power circle turned high-stakes drama. She claims threats were made, that Ackman was furious, that lines were crossed. Ackman himself, usually more at home moving billions on Wall Street than firing off threads on X, responds in full crisis management mode. He posts cordial text exchanges with Kirk, complete with timestamps and pleasantries, practically screaming, "This is what billionaires look like when they're innocent." The rare spectacle of a billionaire descending from his penthouse to wade into social media mud is itself a tabloid fever dream. But as soon as Ackman tries to snuff out the fire, he pours gasoline on it instead. Screenshots are dissected, every "Hey man" is parsed for hidden meanings, and the public is left to decide who's gaslighting whom.
Yeah, you get some kid who has a boyfriend who's a furry, and you
boyfriend is a
talk to him
furry?
on Discord. I think he's a furry.
Is
I
that
don't
a-
want to disrespect.
I don't know if that's a
He's
real
definitely
thing. Is that?
His boyfriend's definitely a guy who became a girl.
And wears furry stuff.
I think they do furry. Or furry games. Excuse me.
This is where the machine really gets humming. The headlines spill over into mainstream territory. What began as another long-winded rant from the fringes now roars through the news cycle. Owens accuses Ackman, Israel, of threatening Kirk. Billionaire denies Hampton's showdown. We watch as the story mutates with each new soundbite. To some, Owens morphs into a tormented Cassandra, punished for naming names. To others, she's the opportunist of the decade, a brand built on drama, unbothered by the ruins she leaves behind. Old colleagues step in. Charlie Kirk's own pastor begs Owens to show respect, insists Kirk would have done the same for her if the tables were turned. The friendship between Kirk and Owens is dissected on rival podcasts, their personal breakup now a subplot in the larger American opera of grievance and betrayal. Even Turning Point USA has to weigh in, confirming the pair remained cordial, which in the language of DC politics is only slightly better than war. But if Candace Owens is playing a dangerous game, she's not playing it alone. The next earthquake comes from the top. Twice in a single week, Benjamin Netanyahu himself, the actual Prime Minister of Israel, comes forward to issue public denials. He calls the rumors insane, false, outrageous. For a man currently juggling a war, coalition headaches, and the small matter of staying out of prison, it's a bizarre detour. Has any world leader ever taken time out of their crisis calendar to tell Americans he didn't order a hit on a conservative podcaster? The fact that Netanyahu feels compelled to respond at all only inflames the fire. Doesn't the denial give the story more oxygen? Is it the sign of an innocent man, or the first whiff of a guilty conscience, worried about a media pile-on? The BB denials are replayed on cable, clipped for social, analyzed by body language experts, as if we're all living inside a reality show with no exit.
Like, the more they keep looking into it, the more they're like, this doesn't feel like a real... It feels super fabricated.
But here's the thing. Just like I was talking about when people are arguing on social media, it's all part of the plan.
As this circus unfolds, official channels trip over themselves trying to keep up. The FBI, we're told, is pressuring Utah authorities to wrap up the case to pin everything on Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old supposedly radicalized by leftist ideology who, according to Owens and her podcasting allies, is nothing more than a convenient scapegoat. Owens fixates on the evidence, or lack thereof. She points to grainy video of a shooter dressed in all black on a campus rooftop, swearing the outfit doesn't match Robinson's alleged t-shirt and jeans. The only eyewitness says the gun didn't even look the same. Meanwhile, the weapon used in the incident itself, Owens claims the bullet was so fragmented, no one can tie it back to Robinson's rifle. There's a whole genre of YouTube now dedicated to replaying every anomaly. The mystery man fiddling with the CCTV camera, the construction team arriving at the crime scene less than a week after the shooting, the prosecutor's messages that sound, as Owens puts it, so federally written. All of it lands with just enough plausibility to keep the internet churning.
Like, you're telling me that this kid who's not military trained, this guy, first of all, how did he get to the roof? How come nobody was looking? How come nobody was like, there's a direct line of sight between where he's sitting and those roofs? You guys didn't check? You don't have a drone? Like, that's insane. So he's on the roof, he shoots, he jumps from the roof. He jumps down 14 feet.
Joe Rogan, never one to let a good mystery slip past his radar, joins the fray after an uncharacteristic silence. Apparently he was out hunting elk, because of course he was. But when Rogan does speak, it's to call the official story horse pit and marvel at the logistical absurdities of the prosecution's timeline. How did this kid, who's not military trained, even get to the roof, Rogan asks, not even bothering to censor himself. How come nobody was looking? The country's biggest podcast host is now openly floating the idea of a patsy, while the authorities insist their hands are tied, that every move they make is to protect the case. For Rogan, the unanswered questions are starting to pile up. The shooter in tactical gear, the missing surveillance footage, the contradictory witness statements. Each detail presented with the tone of a man who expects the story will only get stranger.
He set it up in a way that, like, okay, you're saying something that's actually factually inaccurate,
right,
according to the narrative. Now, let's be real clear. I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird going on with this.
I know.
The Kirk shooting, in other words, is no longer just a criminal investigation. It's an open audition for America's next great conspiracy. The rumor mill devours everything, and no one is immune. By now, even late-night comedians are dragged into the mess. Jimmy Kimmel's show is pulled off the air for comments about Kirk's demise, then abruptly brought back after public outcry. The network is stuck between a rock and a Twitter mob, and suddenly, what was once just a war of words among podcasters turns into a full-blown freedom of speech showdown. With Disney and ABC nervously watching ratings and regulators, every network executive is left wondering, can anyone control the narrative, or are they all just characters in someone else's story? Meanwhile, the most basic facts of the case have become a game of telephone. The Utah governor, Spencer Cox, insists Robinson had a very different ideology from his conservative family, that he'd fallen into the deep, dark corners of internet meme culture, that his relationship with a transgender partner is either relevant or not, depending on the day's talking points. The authorities have no confession. The FBI and state officials can't decide how much to reveal. The public is left with scraps, fragments of a bullet, inscriptions on shell casings, a suspiciously speedy cleanup job on campus, and a web of denials and counter-accusations so dense it's easier to just pick a side and dig in.
The fallout from Charlie Kirk's has spread to the workplace. People are getting fired for comments that seem to celebrate or glorify the assassination of the MAGA activist and father of 2 young children.
All the while, Turning Point USA presses on. The college tour continues, now with a rotating cast of right-wing media stars in Kirk's seat, each trying to outdo the last in tribute and outrage. The group's merch sales spike, the audience numbers soar, and every figure from Vice President J.D. Vance to Tucker Carlson wants a piece of the Kirk legacy. For Owens, it's both vindication and ammunition. Each new denial, each angry rebuttal, every awkwardly released text thread is more proof, at least to her listeners, that something is being hidden. And as the rumors spill from the world of podcasts into the halls of Congress, the stakes just keep rising. Along with the temperature, the result is an atmosphere where nobody trusts anybody, and every official statement is immediately ripped to shreds by a million internet detectives. Why is the Israeli Prime Minister responding to a YouTuber's podcast? Why does a billionaire care enough to post his own receipts? Why is there no clean surveillance footage? Each question hangs in the air, daring anyone, government, media, or otherwise, to answer without flinching. And through it all, Candace Owens keeps broadcasting, her every sentence sharpened for maximum disruption, determined to prove she's the only one still asking the questions everyone else once buried.
Which is what was so stunning. It was unbelievable. The forgiveness that she granted, the strength that it took for her to call for that forgiveness, it's just unmatched, and it really made a difference. And I was being serious when I tweeted that I think it was the most consequential speech in American history, a message that...
But even as Candace Owens cast herself as the last keeper of Kirk's secrets, the backlash began rolling in with the force of a tidal wave. Out of the solemn quiet after the funeral, it was Rob McCoy, Kirk's own pastor and longtime Turning Point USA insider, who stood up and spoke directly to Owens, rebuking her from inside the circle. McCoy, the kind of figure whose words carry real weight among the faithful, didn't mince words. He pleaded, "I only wish at this tragic time of mourning she would be the friend to Charlie that he was to her. He would never have treated Candace or her family in such a way had, God forbid, this tragedy been hers." It wasn't just an old friend calling for restraint. It was an emotional indictment from the heart of Kirk's movement, a warning that Owens had crossed a line between loyalty and exploitation. For everyone who ever doubted how far her star had drifted from Turning Point, this was the moment it all went public. Her history, once the face of their urban engagement campaign, now an outsider airing grievances on podcasts, only made the wound deeper. Here was the movement's own spiritual leader saying, enough. This scolding wasn't just about decorum. It stung because it landed right at the center of Owens' myth-making. For years, she'd used her relationship with Kirk as proof of her access, her authenticity. Now the very community she claimed to champion was calling her out, not for bad optics, but for betrayal, trading grief for clicks, memories for speculation. It's not every day a political organization that brands itself on fierce loyalty ends up policing its own stars this way. Suddenly, Owens' narrative wasn't just up against mainstream fact-checkers, but the moral code of Kirk's closest allies. The awkward question lingered. Was this a desperate bid for the truth, or just a headline chase?
All right, you guys, we're going to jump right into this with no introduction. There's a lot that I would like to speak with you guys about. Can't wait to hear your feedback. A lot of lies that are being put out there, narratives that I would say are half-truths or just misrepresentations entirely.
Yet the walls kept closing in. Bill Ackman, billionaire financier and certified kingmaker, entered the skirmish with a cold fury only the ultra-rich can muster. He published those chirpy, emoji-free text messages. With Kirk, no threats, no angry tone, just business-like small talk, shouting from every corner of X that Owens' story was a fabrication. He called it categorically false, even throwing in the legal buzzword, slandered. The possibility of a lawsuit hung in the air. We know how these things go. 1 minute it's a Twitter spat, the next you're sitting in a courtroom watching a lawyer explain podcast drama to a federal judge. Ackman's people hinted that legal action was on the table, and the speculation churned. Owens refused to back down, firing right back that Ackman was weaponizing the New York Post as attack dogs to smear her. In a different era, this would have been resolved behind closed doors, but now every move is broadcast, memed, and weaponized in real time. Ackman's public denials, Netanyahu's press statements, McCoy's sermons, each added another layer to the sense that Owens was battling not just rumor, but the entire establishment itself. At this point, the spectacle took on a life of its own. Suddenly, the question wasn't whether Owens was right or wrong, but why so many powerful men were lining up to shut her down. For her loyalists, this was the very proof that she was onto something. Was the machine protecting its own, or just trying to keep the fire from jumping the fence? For skeptics, it was classic Candace. Never miss an opportunity to play martyr, never apologize, double down on the drama. The battle lines had been drawn, not just over what happened to Kirk, but over the future of the conservative movement itself. Was there room for genuine suspicion, or only for the party line? Every new voice in the fray seemed to deepen the rift.
Maybe he thought he was going to shoot him. Maybe he's a patsy. Maybe he did it.
I feel like he's a plant. Did you see the video? Did you see the person doing the investigating on his mom's Facebook?
No.
You haven't seen this? Have you seen that, Jamie? Some dude online.
His mom's got a weird Facebook. I
It's
spill coffee.
very trippy. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the more they keep looking into it, the more.
And while Owens threw haymakers in public, another figure was quietly feeding the flames with a subtler touch. Tucker Carlson, America's favorite master of coded insinuation, had dropped his grenade at Kirk's memorial, then slipped out of the blast radius before anyone could pin the narrative on him. Carlson's remarks, likening Kirk's fate to Jesus being sold out by a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, lit up social media like a torch in a fireworks factory. Jewish groups didn't mince words. They called it blood libel, a reference so loaded it could set off alarms on both sides of the Atlantic. But Carlson, veteran of every media dogfight, left himself just enough plausible deniability. He could always say it was about politicians, about power, about anything but a targeted smear. Still, for the people who traffic in outrage, the effect was the same. The coded message landed, the insinuation spread, and the audience walked away thinking the unsayable had finally been said. It's hard not to notice the double standard at work. Owens, blunt and unsubtle, took all the incoming fire, while Carlson's clever phrasing let him ride the outrage wave and cash in on the drama. The effect was almost surgical. One is branded reckless, the other polished, yet both were working the same side of the street, turning tragedy into an opportunity for their own version of the narrative. The grifters and gatekeepers of the right-wing media universe were in overdrive, each angling for control of the story, each willing to risk just enough to claim credit, but not enough to get burned. If this sounds cynical, just look at the post-funeral speaking tours, the book launches, the wall-to-wall podcast coverage. Grief was being monetized at a dizzying speed, and Kirk's ghost had become the hottest commodity on the market.
Yeah, I watched my friend get shot in the neck. Yeah, that's what happened. I just want to say that he was publicly executed again before the world. The question is why, right?
Meanwhile, the official story, the one pushed by law enforcement, by the Utah governor, by anyone in a suit behind a podium, looked shakier with every new leak. Tyler Robinson, the so-called lone shooter, was not cooperating with the FBI. His supposed confession was nowhere to be found. The bullet casings at the scene were inscribed with means and taunts, as if the assassin had left behind an elaborate inside joke for the internet's darkest corners. Robinson's partner in the midst of gender transition became a subject of public fascination, even as officials insisted there was not a solid understanding of how any of it tied to the crime. And through it all, the questions kept coming. Why was there construction at the crime scene days after the shooting? Why did key video footage vanish? Why were so many important players so desperate to close the book? Each new statement from Netanyahu seemed to escalate the stakes. Normally, world leaders don't bother to address what a podcast host says about them. Here, Netanyahu is practically begging the world to move on. Insane, false, outrageous, he called the rumors, as if repetition could drive the specter back into the shadows. But every time he spoke, the opposite happened. For those primed to see a cover-up, the denials themselves became suspicious. For those exhausted by scandal, it was just more noise. But the damage was done. Kirk's legacy, Owens' crusade, Ackman's denials, and Carlson's innuendo were all tangled together, impossible to separate. The movement was eating itself from the inside out, with every public statement deepening the divide.
Maybe he's a patsy. Maybe he did it.
I feel like he's a plant. Did you see the video? Did you see the person doing the investigating on his mom's Facebook?
No.
You haven't seen this? Have you seen that, Jamie? Some dude online.
His mom's got a weird Facebook. I spill coffee.
Very trippy. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the more they keep looking into it, the more they're like, this doesn't feel like a real. It feels super fabricated.
And what about the rank and file, the fans, the followers, the next wave of Kirk acolytes? They watched as the war of words spiraled, each picking their hero. Some saw Owens as the last truth teller, risking her reputation to air Kirk's final warnings. Others saw a reckless opportunist, using a tragedy to boost her brand and settle old scores. The irony is that the louder the noise, the less anyone could claim to know for sure. Owens kept insisting she had the receipts, that the rest were lying, that she had proof the others couldn't match. Her voice grew hoarse, but she kept talking. The ones who used to call her friend now wanted nothing to do with her. Even so, she pressed on, telling her audience that the world would thank her one day. In the end, the fissure at the heart of this movement only widened. Some huddled around Kirk's memory, desperate to keep things clean, to avoid turning grief into gossip. Others tore at every thread, hungry for a villain, for proof that power had once again covered its tracks. The battle line stretched from cable studios to congressional hearing rooms, from Twitter to Sunday sermons. And if there was any hope of closure, it disappeared in the clamor, each new rumor more dramatic than the last. So, are we watching the brave unveiling of a political plot, or just the tragic spectacle of a community eating itself alive? Did Owens really expose Kirk's last words, or did she manufacture a global conspiracy from pain and thin air? We want to know what you think. Is this the cover-up of the century, or the perfect storm of paranoia, opportunism, and grief? Let us know in the comments, because in a world where even the facts are up for grabs, your take might just be the twist nobody saw coming. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and don't believe everything you hear, not even from us.